Hi guys, today I've got a observational drawing of some glass bottles using some pencil and a 0.5 size pen. So I've just set something up in my studio and mapping out the initial proportions and locations for these bottles. So I've got I've got a jar and a pop top bottle, and I'm just looking at exploring how glass works when you layer it over top of one another so that you can see through it, and this having the transparency and how it interacts with the light and the way that it distorts what you're seeing through the glass. So at first, with this one, I'm just trying to establish where all of the main components go. So working big and then going small. So you can see now I've gone back in and I've fixed up some of the proportion on this front bottle, because initially I made it so it was too high. I put the base of it going too tall. So that's fine if you make some mistakes in the initial proportioning stage, because now when I get onto the inking here, I've got everything laid out as accurately as I can, and I'm able to just focus on trying to capture where the darkest parts of the glass are. I'm not necessarily thinking about making the cleanest lines with the pen. I'm just thinking about trying to render where the shadows are forming. So looking at the cast shadow here and the base of the bottle where those darkest parts are being visible, and then when the glass is overlapping one another, how that sort of distorts the quality of the line that I'm drawing, and my ability to see through those objects. They get kind of hazy, so I want to show that a little bit with the lines that I'm making. I'm not being very precious and careful with a lot of the lines, and just trying to get a quick sketch. This one's I think it was a 30-45 minute study. So my aim for this was to build up an understanding of the cast shadows and the composition, to then go into a longer charcoal rendering. So just for a 30 to 45 minute study, using pens very, very effective, because you can get a strong result with focusing on where the cast shadows are forming, and then filling in a little bit of those mid-tones using some cross-hatching. But at the moment, it's entirely focusing on the darkest shadows. So doing that cast shadow and then how it overlaps onto the jar behind it, and mapping out those cast shadows from the cap of that bottle and how it's flipped over. I'm not trying to capture a lot of the detail or a lot of like those midtones, just focusing on the darkest parts of these bottles and this glass. So it's the same with this jar. I think this was a strawberry jam jar, and I liked the different shapes. Like it's not just round; it's not a complete cylinder. It has these curves and these flat edges around the bottom half of it. So I wanted to be able to render those or sketch those out with the pen and show how they interact with the light, and how I can play around with using the pen to render those as best I can. So I'm just using the same pen throughout all of this, and trying to do a little bit of cross-hatching on the right side of these objects. So I've got a light source off to my left, and imagining that that these objects are, well, I don't have to imagine, I have them in front of me. So you can use glass or even just a drink bottle, but try to find something that's got a bit of transparency to it before you get into doing a study of them. Play around with your composition. I spent a little while just fiddling around with where I can put these objects. I wanted to have some of them overlap and intersect, and I was trying to avoid having tangents where where lines of the objects were running up against one another. And the important thing that I'm doing at the moment is going around the object. So the lines that I'm using to shade these are lines that are following the contour of this object. So the back jar, I was just doing some shading, imagining if I took a horizontal line, but instead I bent it so it follows the contour of that jar. So it's following the ellipses that I used to construct the object initially. And then all of the subsequent shading that I'm doing to it, it's following along that same, in that same arc. You can do lots of vertical stuff as well, where you're using cross-hatching technique of overlapping lines. But to get the sense of the form, it helps to have your lines follow in that contour. And then filling out a little bit more of the shading, but I could leave it pretty much there. I wanted to emphasize some of those shadows using a thicker pen, but yeah, this was fun, and I'll take it a little bit further in the next episode. But thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful.